Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today we're taking a look at the Wii Knives Synergy 2. This is a James O. Young design, and it's the Synergy 2 because there was once a Synergy 1, which was really, really cool. So I want to give you a little bit of the background on this knife so you can sort of appreciate what's happening here, because this is a pretty cool thing. So the original iteration of the Synergy was designed by James O. Young. It was the first knife designed using 3D CAD technology. It was an integral button lock at the time. Alan Elishewitz helped James bring it to production. And so, we know Alan really likes those button locks, and so that kind of makes sense. They brought the knife to market under the name the Speed Tech Synergy. So Speed Tech was James O. Young's company, and they were going to produce this knife, and that was sort of the plan. It was an aluminum integral, as I said, with a button lock. It won Knife of the Year in 1999. 1999. Really lots of history here. And considering, what's interesting about that is the things that they were doing with not this knife, but the original version back then are things that are kind of just now becoming a little more common. So really, really interesting history, really cool maker. And of course, more recently in like 2018, James O. Young met Joe from Wii Knives at Blade Show 2018. And that is what resulted in the knife that we're looking at now. So we, decided to go ahead and make this knife a thing. And I'm really glad that it's been successful, because it kind of feels like, the original model, what happened was it was just too expensive to produce. And so it didn't end up sticking around. There was a lot of work in each knife, and, they were doing like individual anodization options when you ordered one. There was a lot. And so it didn't end up kind of coming to full fruition. There are a few of them out there. And if you look around on the secondary, you can find some. They're highly, highly collectible. This, however, is a little easier to get your hands on. In fact, there's even a Civivi version of this coming out, which of course will not be integral like this one is. But all of that history is one of the things that makes this so cool. In addition to that, the knife itself, the construction and innovation of it, the look of it, right? This is a really cool and interesting knife design. Look at that Tanto blade. Moving through here, we've got the flame anodized. Now, they had this weird flame anodized one that looks like it had tadpoles on it, or, something like that. And that one I didn't like. It was a blue ano with these weird little patterns on it. The typical flame ano like this, I found this one a little more compelling. You can see the texturing and milling on this handle. It's a very, very grippy knife that just locks into the hand. All right, so there's a lot going on with this knife. And so in addition to the history, then you have the design, and it's highly attractive and highly interesting. This is the knife that your friends want to hold. This is the knife that makes you go, man, that is one cool looking cutting tool. All right, and finally, what about the practicality of it, the functionality of it? This guy is 8 5/8 overall, 3.5 inches on the blade, 4 13/16 closed. So that's pretty welcome. It's nice to see under 5 inches. All right. 3 7/8 inches of grip area, and 5.1 ounces. Now, I will say this about the weight. It feels pretty weighty. It is not milled internally at all. And I don't think, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there are any internally milled out integral knives. I'm not even sure if that's possible, or if it is, it would be quite involved and probably not make sense financially when building a knife. Okay, so it is a little heavier. By the way, I should point out too, not only is there a Wii version, but there's a mini version of this that has a 3-inch blade. Now, you guys know me. I'm definitely not a fan of mini knives, but I do genuinely wonder, like, the ergonomics on this are quite good. It really does fit into the hand very well. I would really have a hard time believing that they could carry that over to a mini and make it just as comfortable. Maybe they did. I hope they did. but I kind of have my doubts. In the full size version, it feels so good in hand. It feels like really you just grabbed a piece of Play-Doh and kind of squeeze it. I think Eugene Kwan may have said that about this knife himself. By the way, Eugene's video is one of the reasons that I got this, and I would recommend you go check out some of his stuff. I don't know if he's still doing a lot of videos, but the stuff he's already done is already on YouTube is quite good. Now, we've gone over a couple little things here and there. Let's get into a little more detail, beginning with the blade. Look at that stonewash finish. Really nicely done, compound grind. And I like how you can sort of see these lines. Now, on a compound ground knife and an interesting blade like this, I still prefer a satin finish. You guys are gonna get so sick of hearing me say that, but I really do. And now, and part of the problem is on a really heavy stonewash like this, like look how grayed out that is compared to the sharpened edge. Now, what that can show you is if you put a big scratch on this, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb, okay? I know a lot of people probably aren't using these really hard and treating them like a heavy duty folder, but they're certainly designed. This is a very capable cutting tool. Anyway, I prefer a satin finish because if you do scratch the blade, the satin just kind of masks it. Like the scratch just matches the color that the blade already is. Now, aside from my complaining about the stonewash, a hollow grind here, nice and thin behind the edge, which I kind of love. 18 thousandths, which is very, very good. M390 steel. Now, I went with the Tanto, and this is really cool, guys. Like, it's rare, at least to me, it's not common to see sort of this upswept or even almost a trailing point in a Tanto blade. It's not something you see a lot. So we did a really nice job of this. And I do think this Tanto grind balances this blade out a little bit better. In the original standard trailing point, I don't like it quite as much, but the Tanto I really, really connect with. And then add the compound grind and the really nice edge geometry, and this blade is a huge, huge win for me. Very sharp, by the way, very pointy. Even though this is a compound grind, so you're getting a little more strength at the tip. There you go. You can still see that it's fairly fine. And if you're like me opening a bag of milk or something, then, sorry, my hands are a little dirty. I was carrying some tires right before this. Anyway, if you're doing some fine detailed work with that, taking out a splinter or something, it still does work quite well. All right, so that's the blade, and I do like this blade. I just wish it were satin. Moving on to the action. This knife is such a snappy knife. The detent is a little stiffer than some Wii knives, but the jimping on this flipper tab is so good. Like it just grabs your finger like Velcro, and so wow, it deploys so satisfyingly well. Look at that. This is one of the fastest, hardest firing knives that I have. It is so enjoyable. And everyone who picks this up, everyone who's a bit of a knife guy who checks it out is like, man, that action is fantastic. And it really, really is. All right, the Lockbar is quite accessible. There's a little bit of jimping here that does allow you to get a hold of it quite nicely. Again, just right. So it's just enough texture that I can get a hold of this with confidence and close the knife. It is, of course, drop shut. It's a little bit, you've got to shake it a little. That's because the lock bar tension is pretty tight, but that is totally fine by me because I'd rather have tight lock tension and a really, really solid lockup than a perhaps looser or more comfortable lock bar tension that I'm uncertain of. So action is really, really good. But before we leave the pivot, I guess we'll pivot into handle construction and talk about how this thing is put together. Check this out, guys. So see the little line right here and the little line down here. All right. The way that they build these is this comes out, then this comes off, and you can sort of disassemble the pivot all from this side. This actually lifts right out. Okay, so what's happening is the pivot here is holding a little piece of titanium. You can just see the outline of it there, and it's so close, like it's so tightly finished, it's almost not visible. And what that allows is just for, the bearings go in easier. If you do ever have to clean or disassemble this knife, it's way easier to deal with. And so I love the way that Wii Knife does this. This is not the only knife they've done this on. There have been a few others, and I think you can probably find some disassemblies. I couldn't find any disassemblies on this particular knife, and I didn't want to get into it. I've tried disassembly videos before. I'm terrible at it. So I'm not going to get into it here, but I just wanted to go over that I really, really like the way Wii Knives does this. I also really like the way they do the Lockbar insert. Sometimes, companies seem to go, well, since it's an integral, we're just going to skip that step. And I think that's a poor choice, right? Much nicer to see them actually do a proper hardened steel lock bar insert to increase the longevity of the knife. Really, really nice touch. So, I was saying there's some really cool innovation here, and this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like, it's really, really impressive how they've done this pivot and how they make the whole thing work the way that it needs to. So that's definitely very, very noteworthy before we move on to the rest of the handle. For the rest of the handle, you can see it's an integral, meaning this whole thing is milled from a single piece of titanium. Really nice sort of nod to the original, which was milled from a single piece of aluminum. We've got this spoon-shaped clip, which is taken directly from the original design, only this time done in milled titanium. If you were going to change anything, I could have done without this. In fact, you could almost just cut these edges off. All right, and this clip might look a little bit better. It's not the end of the world, but it's just not my favorite thing. Now, going into a pocket, it does work pretty well, and there's such attention to detail that you're not going to be able to see it. Maybe, yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but it's actually smooth right under where the pocket clip connects to the handle, which is kind of, again, it's just attention to detail and really, really nicely done. In terms of the feel in hand, I've already mentioned, but this is great. All right, I like a bit of a saber grip, and notice that the top swedge on the blade here doesn't start right away, so my thumb kind of lands about here, and in this position, it's very, very comfortable. Moving to a hammer grip, equally, sort of a draw cut grip, reverse grip, everything is really, really well done. Finally, before we leave off on the ergonomics, the milling lines here, as well as the jimping in just the right places, lock this in so tight that, again, it's very, very confidence inspiring. When you grip this knife, you're like, yeah, I feel like you could put a clamp on this and just lift me up off the ground and I could hold on to it. It's so, so grippy, which, is great for the type of knife that this is trying to be. So we've covered everything. I think I'm pretty impressed. There are a couple little things that I didn't love, but overall, such a cool knife. So let's go ahead and get to some comparisons. Although, the one thing I have to say is there's not a lot out there that's just like this. This is a pretty special knife, not only for its history, for its design, so to find something that puts all of the same stuff together is going to be pretty tough to do. I will bring in a couple of other knives. Let's start with a knife that I've been really enjoying a ton lately. This is the Bestech Tagata. This is the best thing the Bestech has ever done. It's phenomenal. The action is great. The look is great. The ergonomics are great. And of course, it's also really an interesting design. By the way, designed by a fellow Ontarian, which is really, really cool and certainly adds to why I enjoy this knife as much as I do. Let's get that guy out of the way. We've got the Chavez Liberation here. Okay, flip this guy over so you can check out the great Chavez clip. All right. So this would be something I would kind of put in a similar ballpark where the design is cool and it allows you to get something that's really special and interesting. What else have we got? Another Riot build. This, of course, is the Sharp by Design Evo Typhoon, which is another favorite knife. Again, the cool thing here is you've got this great design, unique designer, like hard to get. These are very close in terms of how much I enjoy them and how much I connect to them based on not just the functionality of the knife, but the design and the background and all of that. So The Typhoon is a pretty good example. There are some other things, certainly, whoops, my Nkosi, you kind of have to bring in a Chris Reeve whenever you're talking about titanium frame locks. We've got zero tolerance. There's the 0308. And now for a more budget-friendly Wii knife, the Wii Upshot is not nearly as unique or interesting as the Synapse, but it is a really nice offering from Wii. And if you're going like Kevin, I like the Synapse too, but it's too expensive or, just too big for me or whatever, the Upshot might be a really good option for you. So there you go. There are some various other nice high-end titanium frame locks with interesting designs that are pretty compelling and special for other reasons other than just, it's a practical cutting tool. And I think I already mentioned there is a Civivi version coming. So that's an important point under this comparisons discussion, because if you're going, yeah, I love this design, I really want one, but there's no way, these are expensive and they're hard to get, blah, blah, whatever other reasons you want to give, there will be a Civivi. Now, it's not going to be an integral, of course, but you could get your hand on the design. I don't know, but for some reason in my mind, I'm thinking that it's the Civivi version is based on the Synergy Mini instead of the full size. That would kind of be a shame. If it's the full size, you'll probably see a review on this channel. So what's the conclusion here? What is this knife all about? Look, this is a piece of functional artwork. All right, it's beautiful, and yet when you pick it up in hand, it feels great. It has an interesting look to it, and sometimes you kind of go, well, is this gonna work? And then you hold it and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so good, right? So yeah, it works extremely well. It's a piece of knife history, right? The original Synapse kind of didn't pan out. Won Knife of the Year in 1999, and now it's available again. I love that. As much as I love everything, as much as I love anything about this knife, I love the history of it, that it's sort of a story of a great knife and a first effort by a really cool maker that did some cool things that weren't common at the time. And now, it's available. So it's a piece of knife history. And in addition to, so we've got functional artwork, we've got knife history, and finally, it's a piece of great cutlery. Okay, it really, really works well. It's comfortable in hand. It slices like crazy. So this really does a lot of good stuff. Yeah, there are a couple little things that I don't absolutely love about it. The clip being one, the blade finish being one. Maybe someday they'll bring out a satin version and I'll be able to like trade this or sell it and get the satin version. I don't know. But if you think I kind of like this knife, you would be correct. This is really, really cool, and it's cool for a whole bunch of different reasons. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out White Mountain Knives. They did get a shipment of Wii stuff recently, so Justin may have some of these in stock. If he doesn't have these, he probably has the Mini. I hope he has some full size as well, because the full size, in my opinion, is kind of where it's at. So that's the one to get. Southern Edge Knife Works, I don't know if they carry a lot of Wii stuff. I'll have to check with them, but hopefully they do. Anyway, if you can't find what you need over White Mountain Knives, check out Southern Edge Knife Works as well. Discount code works at both. 10% off at White Mountain Knives, 15% off at Southern Edge Knife Works. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Man, I'm talking a lot. This is 18 minutes long. We will talk to you soon.